I'm going to hope that that's a yes. Anyway, welcome everybody. And it's such a pity that I was not able to be there today. I really was hoping to meet all of you and connect with you. But thank you so much for coming in today. And what you and I are going to be going through today is we're going to be talking about holographic DNA and the link between many, many factors which have to do with consciousness, with ET connection, and primarily our purpose, what we're here today, and what makes a human so special. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, pranic and quantum energy healer, as well as an experiencer, a lifelong experiencer. And my contact experiences in 2013 basically resulted in the activation of psychic abilities from one day to the next that literally allowed me to see what the multidimensional body looked like. And from that point, diving very deep into understanding what the multidimensional body was about, what it consists of, the information that we're made up of, and then over the past 5 years, really diving into the mechanics of our multidimensional body, the mechanics of creation and how they affect us. So I'm going to share my screen with you now so I can go ahead and show you my presentation that I put together for us to kind of journey together with. I'm going to go ahead and go into presentation mode. I hope you can see that okay. Please let me know that if you can see that okay. It's not full screen. I can see, yes, I can see my notes. It's not full screen. I have it full screen. Let me see. Oh, you know what? You're looking at, okay, let me change. Okay, I need to swap presenter view. How about that? Okay, which means my little screen's over there. So let me bring that over here into this window in a moment. I have two screens as well. Here we go. All right. All right, here we are. All right, guys. So we're going to talk about holographic DNA, the fabric of our reality. And welcome to Camp Disclosure. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you so much to Christy, all the organizers, Chris, for putting such hard work into putting this event together. It's such a pleasure to be a part of it. When we did talk about the structure of reality, we're just going to deep dive into what is the nature of our reality. And one of the things that in my hypnotherapy, so as a result of my contact experience, a powerful experience in 2013, in which I was consciously taken out of my bedroom on board craft and introduced to many different kinds of information inside the craft. I was shown this ET technology inside of a spacecraft. I was introduced to the holographic function of how they kind of manipulate time and space, and how these crafts are very much interdimensional, energetic, as opposed to static material or metal. And I was also introduced to alien language, ET language, in which it was very much this incredible symbols that represented infinities and concepts that are not just me and you, but me and the universe. And this is how they would communicate. So they would show me these symbols that would represent that. And also, they introduced me to my hybrid children. And when they introduced me to my hybrid children, these little 8 lights, 4 of which manifested before me in the form of children. And the connection with them immediately was so incredibly powerful that it just transformed my understanding of reality. I began to remember things of the past. I began to recognize when I had been with them, and it just really, my reality just shattered at that point. So I began to research, what was this reality that we're experiencing? And when we talk about this fabric of reality, what unites us in the experiences, Chris, can you hear me okay? Oh, is there a problem? Tell me. Is everything okay? Should I continue? I can't hear anything. Just to let you know, I can't hear anything. So if someone could cue me and let me know if it's okay to continue. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So when we look at the fabric of reality, how are we interconnected? How is it possible that through time and space, based on the physics that we currently have existing and what we're aware of, we can have contact experiences like this? Much less, not only did it affect the way that I saw reality, but from one day to the next, many things affected me physically, in which literally I had burns in my skin, my eyes were bloodshot for the next couple days, and the level of sensitivity and activity, psychic activity that I had affected me for the next 3 months. I couldn't leave my house for the next 3 months because I would see everything about the multidimensional body. And so it really just, for me, if it wasn't for that fact, I could have, equated this kind of impactful event to some kind of dream, some incredible lucid dream. But it was a proof for me to understand that this was a very powerful experience. And so we take a look at what the fabric of our reality is. And basically, what we're dealing with is this space that is more of a network. It's a network of information. It's a network that really looks like a lattice. Not only is our time and space filled with these little points in our energetic space, but in the universe, it's what combines our space with others, and the way that those spaces communicate with each other are through wormholes, black and white holes. And really, what science understands is that we are a collection of wormholes, black and white holes that we are embodying not only just within the body but also within space. So if we look at how to navigate a time and space that would look like that, if it was all a lattice work, it really helps us to understand several spaces that we cannot visualize with our eyes or perhaps touch or feel. Water, for example, has this incredible network in which we feel the anti-gravity. We can really feel the water movement, the ebb and flow of movement. And it's the same thing in the air. When airplanes are flying, they're flying over pressure pillows, but there is this invisible net that is suspending all of these objects within space. There is this pressure that is creating tension for these objects to exist. And our physical body is very much the same way in our time and space. The way that our physical body, we in our body function having a center axis that moves through the center core of the body and also through the center abdomen. And everything that is within the multidimensional body exists based on the chakra system. The chakra system, which is the first seven chakras within the body, are actually holographically projecting, extending out into our space. And the interesting thing about this space, when we look at the quantum mechanics of man and its experience, and we begin to question consciousness, this is where things begin to get very complicated, very difficult to understand. But there is the science to help us understand how to interact with these non-physical entities, non-physical attachments, beings that are being found in our space. Once we understand that the fabric of our reality is made up of everything that is extending from the inside out of our body, from the chakra system out, we're literally navigating moment by moment based on the experience and the emanation of the things that are coming from the center core of the body. And this creates a network. Every single, this lattice that we spoke of is actually existing within our energetic field as well, within our field. And this lattice would actually exist around the entire body that you see here. But every single point of that lattice is a point within the field, within the network of the physical body. And this model of this lattice is actually infinite. It goes all the way down to the molecular level, and it really helps us understand by looking at the molecular level how these much larger models work, like the Earth in the universe and so on and so forth, if you expand out. Now, every single one of these dimensional planes, every chakra would be a dimensional plane. It is a field that extends out from the body. And what we look like is really like this. The human body, which has up to infinite number of chakras, but within this immediate universe, 13 dimensions are the dimensions in which we are primarily operating in. And the first three chakras are the ones that are primarily interacting with the physical plane around us. Now, this is very important because we begin to understand kind of like how the human, when they're going through an ascension or awakening process, kind of begins to interact with its environment and how it exchanges that information. Every single one of these layers is connecting us to a dimensional plane. In those dimensional planes exists consciousness that is manifested within that plane. And as you get up to the higher planes, this is where you begin, and this is probably the 9th to the 13th dimension, is where you begin to come in contact with entities, beings, interdimensional beings, angelic beings, whatever the name that we have applied to them. Basically, these are non-physical bodies that can move in and out of these dimensional planes. And they do so by resonance based on what we have in our energetic body. So what we actually end up looking like is very much like this giant orb network of information. And there are multiple levels of this kind of orb function. This is a map of what a multidimensional body would look like to me. When I tap into their physical body, I begin to tap into their information, not just their past lives, but their interdimensional aspects of themselves. And so here you can see expressed everything from your childhood memories, which would be another sphere of layers. For example, all of the experiences that you've had from the moment of birth until you grow up would populate the inner sphere of this bubble, of this sphere. And all of the lifetimes that you've had previous to this lifetime would populate the second sphere. The third, fourth sphere, depending on the dimensional plane, would begin to access all of your fragments of yourself that are existing in these other dimensional planes. So this is how the human can begin to tap into its fragments and bring them into the present moment. For example, when I had my ET experience, it was months of meditation, months of reintegration, and that work I did completely outside of the idea that I would connect and I would discover this connection with interdimensional contact. But once I began to dive deeper into the ET and experiencer phenomena, I began to realize that many contactees, many experiencers that are either born with psychic abilities or activate those psychic abilities through meditation and personal development end up encountering these kinds of activities, these kinds of interdimensional contacts. Some children that are being born today are already quite wide open, so they immediately remember a lot of their past lives and a lot of their interdimensional aspects, their starseed lineages per se. It begins to become expressed within them. So it's very important to understand these layers of information that we're made up of, because we also begin to understand how we incarnate into the family lineages that we're a part of. Our family lineages, the families that we are born into, are basically designed and we are connected to them by resonance. And this really plays a role in how we are experiencing contact, how we are experiencing many things in our life. It even plays a role in our genetic code and in the classification of our blood type. And I'm going to go into that in just a moment. But it's very interesting that when these lineages are expressed in the physical body, we begin to access the information of cyclical ancestral trauma, cyclical ancestral programs. And all of that is available through this map. Now, let's go deeper into the physical body. We're going from micro to macro when we talk about the actual physical body. When we end up with illnesses, when we end up with attachments in the body, blockages in the body, all of those things are also expressed through the network of the body, which is the major endocrine system of the body connected to the chakras. So, all of this is deposited within not just the nervous system layer of the body, but of course, your DNA is interconnected with all of these systems, and it is informing all of these networks, including your nervous system, your endocrine system, and all of the endocrine system is, of course, the chakra system. It is an overlay of the chakra, the physical overlay of the chakra system. So anytime that we have any attachments, which are blockages of life force and consciousness and information, they begin to become stagnant within the physical body, and they do not allow the movement of life force moving through the body. And so we end up quite stagnant, kind of like you see here. Literally, you can begin to see distortions in the multidimensional field. You can begin to see blockages, heavier concentrations of color and energy. And this is where you begin to see how the body is expressed. Now, this plays an important role because it defines the kind of experience that experiencers are having. Some experiencers claim to have contact that is very low vibration. Sometimes they can be incredibly traumatic experiences. So, why are some people experiencing these very traumatic experiences and others are having these angelic, incredible light experiences? And it really has a lot to do with the information that we have within our genetic code. Parasitic consciousness in our world is very much interacting with the nervous system of the body. And the nervous system of the body is connected to the information that is within the chakra system. So anytime that we have blockages in the chakra system, all of the traumas, the ancestral traumas that are brought down from our lineages, our father and mother lineage, are being expressed through triggers. Any triggers that we experience in life begin to trigger those activities, and it causes us oftentimes to go in a state of survival, fight or flight. And we embody stress, and that stress creates inflammation in the body and ultimately illness and stagnation. So this is very important for us to understand the technology of the body because it has a lot to do with what we are now and what we have the potential of becoming as a human race, and how we can develop from that point. Everything in the universe is moving in a spiral form. And even our physical bodies are made up of multiple vortices, including the chakra system, but also the way that the energy moves around the body in order to create the physical, architecture of this physical body. And so the interesting thing about that is that the model of this kind of spiral expression is designed in a way where it's an expression of fractals. It is as above, so below, infinitely self-similar patterns of creation. And we see this not just in the structure of our reality, but we see it in the way that events play out in our life. We see it in the way ancestral trauma deposits and passes down. We even see it in how contact experiences are experienced by families. It literally, contact experience is in the genetic code, and it is always expressing through the mitochondrial DNA coming up in the family lineage. So it's very interesting and important to understand that, because when we see families that have had contact experience, we begin to realize that, you know, the mother had it, and then the grandmother had it, and the great grandmother had it. And this understanding of our interdimensionality is something that is actually embedded in us. It's not actually something that's completely new, it's completely abstract. The fact that we're not talking about it more is hopefully changing now. So what we end up looking like is really this incredible multiverse of consciousness, as above, so below, meaning that there are self-similar patterns, and how these patterns of consciousness manifest themselves are like spheres. It becomes spheres of information, spheres that the body is creating through creating toroidal fields, through the oscillation of every molecule down to the molecular level. Creates these toroidal fields in internally and externally, and they are navigating and intercommunicating with one another through something called quantum non-locality. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But the same fields that are surrounding the Earth, the same toroidal field that is around Earth is similar, has the similar structure as that we have around the body. So we kind of begin to look at all the information that is now deposited in the multidimensional body, and we say, why is that important to know? All of this information, everything from contact to our psychic abilities to our lineages through past lives, all of that is within the body, and it plays a role in the vibrational frequency that we each have. Each one of us has a vibrational signature that is unique to us. And encoded in that vibrational signature is all of this experience. So any kind of attachments that we have in the body kind of look like this. They're kind of lingering in our space. And what happens is that they become reference points at which we continue to come back. We keep pulling information back from those reference points into the present moment. So at the same time, what that means is that we can also change our reference points. And this is something that I do in DNA reprogramming and also utilizing hypnotherapy in order to silence the reptilian analytical brain in order to begin to activate the higher dimensional planes, the higher aspects of the physical body. Now, let's take this deeper because we're talking about DNA today. So what does this have to do with our genetic code? How can we understand it deeper? Now, 90% of our code is non-coding, which means that 90% of it is not what's writing the programs in order to create a cell for a finger or for a leg or for an arm or for an organ in the body. And so genes make up 1 to 2% of our DNA protein making in DNA. 80% of the human genome is functional. Okay, so it's very interesting to understand how much of our information we don't understand how it functions in our body. We don't understand the link, or at least mainstream science does not understand the link between that information, which they call junk DNA or dark DNA, is actually being discovered as a massive amount biocomputer storage system of information. In fact, in 1 tablespoon of DNA, we can store the entire world's history. So if you can imagine how much information we have in our body that we don't yet understand, well, we can begin to understand a little bit about that by beginning to look at the origins of life on this planet and how we came about to be into the human race that we are. In 2017, when I was hypnotized in order to understand my contact experience, I began to channel and download information regarding DNA origins on this planet. And immediately, the first information that came in was that we are seeding life in Mesopotamia. And I literally saw a map very similar to this that you're seeing here, presented to me as I'm looking at the origin of life, and how it began in Mesopotamia and kind of expanded out to the different continents. And this plays a role because what it means is that you and I here in this audience, we have 2,000 years ago, you and I have someone in common. So there is an origin point to our race. And let's take it deeper. What are those origin races consisting of? There are 3 main bloodlines that created our human race, and I saw them as a red, blue, and a green. These main bloodlines are depicting the original structure, basically, of our genetic code. And the influences that we have of these bloodlines play a role not only in our biology, physiology, but also our psychic abilities and how our multidimensional body functions. So as we begin to understand, the blue bloodline was shown to me to be a Pleiadian lineage, a Pleiadian race. The green bloodline was shown to me to be a draconian reptilian bloodlines. And the red bloodline was shown to be a center earth bloodline, which are designed to create matrices. They are designed to create matrices in different solar systems, and this is their specialty. So these bloodlines now are the primary bloodlines that have breeded together in order to create life on this planet, you and me. And these main bloodlines are descendants of these original families that have gone down through history, preserving the bloodline. And that is a practice that was very, very important back in these times. It was very important to preserve a bloodline in order to preserve its purity. Okay. And now looking at this information, looking back at why that was believed, it makes a lot of sense, because anyone that comes into the bloodline is bringing in an entire lineage of information. And how our bloodlines were carefully designed in order to create the races that we have on the different continents with specific information that pertains not only to the kind of biology that's expressed in the body, but also the ethnicity, color, languages that are being spoken. All of those are expressions of the different descendants of the different species in the universe. And all descendants are descendants of the draconian lineage, which is one of the oldest lineages in the universe, down to the Lyran, down to the reptilian, and all of the races that make up all the races that we know of, that we name, are basically descending into our genetic code as well. This is why we understand our starseed connections and our information. But these lineages were preserved in such a way that certain lineages were preserved in order to be in power. They were designed to be the ones that were going to have the very important information, usually in esoteric knowledge and very, mysticism, understanding of how this multidimensional body functions. All of these things that we are learning now by looking at some of these mystery schools, but also by activating our psychic abilities, are things that have been kept in the dark, specifically by these groups historically. And it goes all the way down to our presidential, families, actually. But not just this. There are many, many families, including the primary groups that are managing the financial systems in our world. In fact, 147 companies are the ones that own all companies on this earth. And so what that means is that there is a very small group of, I guess you can call them elites, that are primarily managing all of the information and, I guess, monopolizing many of the systems in which we're partaking in and participating in. So this is very important to understand, because it plays a role in the creation of the structure of our reality. What we perceive as reality might not be the way that we perceive it to be. This concept of the human being in survival mode, the concept of having to strive in order to get the basic needs met, like electricity, like water, like organic food, like homemade food. So many different organizations are monopolizing these systems, including the pharmaceutical industry, in which now we are living very seemingly limited lives where we're having to choose certain things. And so these lineages have a lot to do with that. So if we look at the kind of blood type and the color of the blood, what makes the blood the color that it is, depending on the kind of base that the base metal that is within this blood type, it will define the color, which is very interesting. Our main color is based on iron. Okay, that's why it's red. And other species are different base. So we really begin to understand that these blood colors, these classifications do exist. And something that's interesting is that when a researcher for, I believe it was Arizona University, discovered that some of the markers to understand how to manage this, chlorophyll-based blood type can only be manageable through understanding quantum levels of understanding. That means that it's literally manifesting on another dimensional plane in which we have access to understand how it is developing in the cellular structure of the organism. So it really helps us understand that we are interacting. There are these other dimensional beings that exist within our body, within our world that we are interacting with. Now, if we take a look at overlapping that previous map of how we have genetically originated in Mesopotamia, we also take a look at how blood types have developed. And primarily many unique blood types like Rh negative, for example, is concentrated in very specific areas around the world. And one of those areas, which is very interesting when we take a look at the Nazca skulls, for example, which were genetically tested and found that they were Rh negative and potentially have a connection with the Basque region. It really makes us wonder, how is it that this lineage came all the way down to South America, in which it's very hard to find any remains of that in any other archaeology. And we can look at Michael Cremo's work with some incredible discoveries, and where we're understanding that life on this earth is actually much older than we believe and that we understand. So it's important to understand how these genes have passed through European history, how they have passed through world history. And when you map the evolution of these lineages, this map overlaps over the family lineage that I showed you earlier, the family tree of how these preserved bloodlines were distributed through the different countries. And we clearly see that in the depiction of this graph. You can see all of these slides on my website for further reference if you wish to dive deeper into them. Now, the element that really interested me was in understanding how contact, so ultimately, what we're understanding is that we are a hybridized race because there are blood types and DNA is being preserved. The information, the data in that is being somehow carefully crafted to create the races that we have. So how does contact participate in that? I believe that it has a tremendous role. The ICAR did a research here regarding Rh negative and contactees, and taking a look at the kind of blood type that they have. And primarily the blood type is Rh negative for contactees that are remembering their contact experience. And within my organization, Hybrid Mother support group that I funded, we also have interviewed 500 contactees and been able to discover that we have similar percentages in the amount of contactees that are recalling their memories more readily available, the information in Rh negative blood types. So I think that that has a really important role, but it also allows us to understand how the development of these kinds of factors move through our genetics. Rh negative, they originate in Basque, and it's interesting because there really is no, in linguistics, a very clear understanding how that language came to be. There is no connection to any of the relatives in that region of the world. Now, something interesting also, Carl Landsteiner is the one that discovered the Rh negative group, but he primarily immediately was recruited by the Rockefeller Institute in order to begin to research that blood type. And it was very interesting to find, and I have a whole other presentation on this, in which we start going into how these families have carefully selected specific blood type agendas historically that were played out. But one of them that I found very interesting is the connection between Hitler's interest in the Rh negative and positive blood types. He believed that there was an elite race and that certain groups were inferior based on their blood type. And there is a Japanese biologist that also works on that as well. He actually created an entire system to classify personality types based on blood type, and it's actually being utilized in dating sites and social media sites in Japan. It's actually a big thing. Anyway, the Human Genome Project, I'm sure you are familiar with, but what the primary information about that is that only 30,000 genes were found in the human DNA. So it's only 300 more that it takes to build a mouse. And so ultimately what that means is that the primary gene code for all living organisms is the same. The base code is the same. And from there, it's genetically modified to create these different races. So that's important to know, because this is not just talking about Earth organisms. We're talking about accessing further information, but how? Um, uh, Dr. Peter Garayev is a Russian scientist. Unfortunately, he passed away now. But he's the one that brought into the mainstream understanding that junk DNA is not just an empty, unnecessary aspect of the human body. In fact, he proposed that it's actually the base understanding of how we can have holographic systems within the body. And after my downloads of this information, after researching and researching everywhere, trying to find supporting evidence for how we can explain holographic DNA from an abstract concept into a more concrete, this is the first person that I found that actually understood it in the way that I was shown this information. But what he discovered and what he created is clinics in Russia in which they were literally building and growing limbs of the body based on vibrational frequency expression that began to edit and create, growing the genes to grow an arm, to grow a part of the body. And he did so through something he called DNA reprogramming, different than my technique, but utilizing the vibrational frequency of language, changing the sequence of the genetic code, as if it were a language, changing, let me actually come over here, changing the sequence of the code, transfixing the location of that code in order to bring it back into its baseline or its more expressive state. And if we look historically at how DNA is written, literally it's like a language. We are speaking a language, and the entire body has its own DNA language. And what we look at is that our actually spoken language could have been mimicking, because it's written in the same way. It's a sequence of syntax that is created in order to create the genetic code. Our language is very much the same. Here is a depiction of light language that was translated by James Newman for me. I began to speak light language in 2018 after a near-death experience in which I began to channel this strange language. And at first, it was very scary for me, but when I began to record the information, I began to connect with James, and he translated that information. And it was a message from my grandmother who had just deceased. And the interesting thing is that language is formulated by vibrational patterns of information. And so just the way we speak, our words have patterns of information that are affecting our bodies. They're affecting the bodies in many different levels, physically, emotionally, energetically, the nervous system, in many different ways. It is literally a creative life force that is creating. And so when we ask the question, does DNA reprogramming actually work? It absolutely does, because when you understand the vibrational frequency of a body and what it needs, you can then implement that vibrational frequency into the healing. So ailments, illnesses, all of those things can be reversed through understanding this key element of the syntax of DNA being written and edited. And of course, we talk about epigenetics, which is the environment and how it influences our genetic code. What we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're eating, all of that influences what we are as a human organism. All of that information is within this dark DNA. And the information of who we are as a whole organism is actually all encoded in that space. So holographic DNA projects a blueprint for the organism that is translated from the electrodynamic to the molecular level. Research strongly suggests that DNA functions as a biocomputer. The DNA wave computer reads and writes genetic code and forms holographic pre-images of the biostructure. So we are more fundamentally electromagnetic than the chemical beings. The chemical processes are just one limited process of our much greater system that we are. So how does this work? Every single cell down to the molecular level is oscillating, and that oscillation creates a toroidal field. Just like an engine, when an engine is moving, it creates this vibrational toroidal field around it. And this is that model of spheres that I showed you earlier. This is what's being created. Here's a photograph of that cell, of that oscillating. And what they found is that it creates these incredible patterns here, these geometric patterns with different blood types, as you can see here, that express different patterns. These vibrational patterns are what make up our vibrational frequency. So there is a categorization for the kind of frequency of each human being that transcends just our genes and our ethnicity. There is another layer, an overlay of intelligence that the human race actually expresses, that's vibrational. And this is the language that we really need to understand now. This is the future of DNA and creating for man. So DNA is the future of storage system as well. Here in the Silicon Valley, they are mimicking DNA because it can store so much information that, as I mentioned, in a teaspoon of DNA, we can fill the entire world's history. So we have many companies here that they are utilizing this in order to store information. So get ready. I predict this, I don't know, 5, 6 already in 2017, that the next step in the systems right now are DNA codes or DNA information. So it'll hold everything. It'll hold your blood type, the medications that you're taking, everything about your body will be either in this microchip of genetic sequencing, or it's going to be in a card in which your DNA will be the barcode of information. So I think that we are somewhat headed in that direction based on the things that we're seeing in the world today. But let's take this to the next level now. So what happens in this wonderful dark DNA that we're discussing, okay? So when a soul enters into the physical body, it is attaching to two different systems. It is attaching to the DNA, the ancestral information, and it is also attaching to the holographic system, which is the chakra system. And when it attaches to these two, it begins to inform all of the life experiences that we're going to have from birth going out into, life. This is going back to utilizing DNA for security systems. So this information that is within our genetic code is literally showing us that we have ancestral connections with our star families. So ET contact is expressed in the genetic code. If we are having more connection to Pleiadian lines or reptilian lines or whatever it is that we feel we're connected to, all of this information is within that dark DNA, and it becomes activated through the activation of our psychic abilities. And the psychic abilities, the activation of that is an important element to ascension, but also to the healing of the organism, the full, complete maturity of this human organism. There is a very powerful connection between autism savants in the ET contact, and that is that a lot of these children that are being born from the spectrum are actually incredibly gifted in many different ways. They are not only just remembering their past life experiences, their ET connections, but they have incredibly advanced for example, mathematical activities, or they're incredibly advanced in physics. Any one of these areas, they are incredibly advanced, and they really dominate those areas. And it has to do with their previous lifetime, their simultaneous lifetimes, I should say, and the fragments of their interdimensional selves that they are in contact with. All of that is brought into the present moment, and they are able to address that. So those of you that have these children in the family are incredibly, incredibly special. And one of the things that we need to focus on now is training parents in general with dealing with these special children, because it's not just them, it's the new children and new waves of children that are coming in, everything from the indigo, rainbow, crystal, down to the kids that we're having now. And in 2017, there was a new wave of children that are being born, which are now coming in with much more information readily available for them. They are incredibly psychic and in tuned and very connected with technology as well as a biocomputer. So what we're headed, the direction that we're headed in is beginning to understand that we are choosing the organic over the artificial. That's kind of where we're at right now. Okay. So what percentage of people get abducted? I mean, we have actually millions of people that I believe it's 4 million people that actually claim that they have been abducted. And from those abduction experiences, many of them claim to be a part of the hybridization program. So this is interesting because the hybridization program, for some reason, hasn't really made it to the mainstream, even within the ufology field or even within the disclosure field, because it's very heavily it's very difficult to put it into a box and to categorize it, simply because contact experiences in the hybridization program can be very troubling. And a lot of women and men that experience these contact experiences are literally having visions and interconnections with races. They are breeding with them. They are having dreams of having intercourse with them. They are having many different traumatic experiences sometimes. But these are very much affecting the physical body. So there are women and men, including myself, that have become pregnant as a result of these ET contact experiences, gestated a fetus for a certain amount of time, and then lost the fetus. Okay, so this is the hybridization program. So what is happening that this kind of contact is occurring and we're not talking more about it? Taking a look at why these genetic lineages can't breed, because it's a different dimensional plane, they operate on different laws of creation. But what is necessary in order to manage the physical plane is to have the connection with the physical organism. So, the body has to be incubated in the body. And the human body, the technology that is being utilized to carry this out is incredibly advanced. In my support group, it is incredible. I have hundreds of people from around the world that come and join us. And the incredible part about it is that the story is always the same. There's always a similarity. And these are people that have never heard about ET's topics before, much like my story. When I first began to realize that the events in my life since the age of 5 were so interconnected directly with this ET contact, you begin to understand that maybe millions of us are experiencing this without our awareness. But as an intuitive, all this information is available to us in the multidimensional field. And when you tap into the multidimensional body, when you activate your intuition, you have access to this information. And it begins to uncover, like onion peels in layers. You begin to understand the structure of your body. And your body is quite complex, holding all of these fragments that are available for you. You can access healing and bring it into your body and heal your body. You can access information through the Akashic system. And the Akashic system is basically the DNA of the earth. It's the holographic DNA of the earth. And within those layers of the earth, we have information about the different dimensions. And within those dimensions, the different species or consciousness that populate those dimensional planes based on its resonance. The names that we apply to these beings, we have a certain category of maybe 30, 40 races that humans are primarily repeating over and over again and claiming that they connect with. So what it seems to be is that some of this consciousness is organized in perhaps just like in humans, archetypal arrangement of consciousness from the very low races up to the highest vibrational races. And the name of those races don't really design what they're doing. There can be Pleiadians involved in reptilians, and they can be in a high vibrational agenda, and there can also be a lower races. But what they have in common is that they have an interest. The common interest is the human. It is the genetics of the human in order to procreate, in order to evolve. And what is occurring through these hybridization programs is a fragmentation of the human soul. Just like you saw that entire orb of different fragments, every single child that is created physically and interdimensionally is a fragmentation of the human. Literally, there is an aspect of ourselves within that genetic code that holds all our blueprint that is implemented in the fetus, in these beings. The hybridization program now, just a quick overview, has a very specific process in case anyone in the audience has had this experience. But it begins with an implantation of artificial intelligence. It's bio-artificial intelligence utilizing your DNA, your genetic material, and insert it in the body in order to monitor the body as you develop from the age of 5, usually, up until when you're ready to conceive. And then it would begin an insemination. And the insemination can either be mechanical, it can be in a petri dish, in vitro, or it can be these perceived imagery where you are literally made to have intercourse with a being. And it can be someone that is another human holding a different gene lineage, or it can be a being that you are interacting. Now, there are many different hybridization programs. Personally, I've been a part of 4 of them. One, which is a terrestrial program. And the terrestrial program working with the government is very much it's a cloning program. And it's slightly different than these hybridization programs. But once there is an insemination, there is an incubation for up to 3 months to full term. And the removal, then they remove the fetus, they incubate it, and they insert the hybrid once the hybrid is developed into the reincarnation timeline, which is what you and I are experiencing here on Earth. So it plays a role in our understanding of hybridization, not just the hybridization program that's occurring with these interdimensionals, but with our own hybridization program of the human race and what we have gone through historically, how we have ended up being this entire human race here on this planet. And it really plays a role in how we are developing and why there is a suppression of information around disinformation. So methods of abductions, of course, can be physical screens where they create a 3D holographic imagery pulled from the subconscious mind, from your subconscious mind, and they create something that looks like something that you're experiencing, and it could be like a dream, but in fact, you're actually experiencing contact. And usually the contactee will not understand what they underwent until they undergo hypnosis, or they begin to have memories later on that they hadn't remembered that were being suppressed. There are also interdimensional portals. Again, we go back to that black and white holes that begin to open up. It's through these wormholes that we have the ability to interact with these interdimensional beings. Any being from the 11th dimension, 9th dimension, 10th dimension is presenting itself in our 3-dimensional, 4th dimensional plane. So this is where people, abductees, begin to have activated genetics. They begin to have activated psychic abilities because they are moving in and out of these dimensions. And the organism has to quickly adjust as it moves in and out of those times. And missing time is definitely something that is incredibly important in that, because it helps us understand that our time, which we perceive as linear, it doesn't exist on these dimensional planes. We're literally dealing with simultaneous timelines that are at different rates depending on the dimension that you're visiting, that you're accessing. So a lot of times people will have missing time. The physical extractions, wherever we're living, we're removed out of the space physically, like what happened to me and happens to many abductees that are physical conscious experiences. But we can also be affected in the astral planes, which is why this phenomena is so difficult to pinpoint and to just say it's one or the other. When we leave our physical body in dream time, when we detach from the physical and our consciousness is traveling either in the astral planes, the dream states, this is where the entire body kind of is most open to any kind of activity. Based on your vibrational frequency and the genetic code and your ancestral lineage, you will come in contact with matching resonance in those planes. So, this is why people that have traumatic experiences, for example, can begin to kind of change those experiences by changing their vibrational frequency. And this is what I teach, what I do, what I have done for myself. There's many different types of insemination. It can be mechanical, biomechanical, screened, intrahuman, or alien sexual intercourse, as I mentioned before. But this presentation is not really focused on that, so we're just going to move through that. I speak a lot of that on other occasions. The imprinting of DNA is incredibly important. The moment that there is that union, is created a spark, a vibrational frequency that imprints the genetic code at the moment of insemination. So the process of that insemination is important for the kind of organism that is created. And we also experience that in our earth. When we have a child, the moment that we unite with another human, that the intention, the core intention behind that union is what imprints into the child, into the fetus. And when the fetus begins to develop in the womb, the child is absorbing absolutely everything that the mother is expressing, is feeling, is sensing. So anytime that there's a very traumatic experience, the child begins to formulate its complete understanding of what life is going to be like when it comes into earth. And it begins to create its understanding of emotions, fears, its survival mechanisms, and when it's going to need to use them. So it plays a role in this ancestral cyclical trauma that we are now trying to deprogram, perhaps as adults. And it's important to go all the way back to the womb to be able to deprogram these programs. Fear is very much a very slow, heavy wavelength. And the root chakra is the house of that fear, of the primal instincts of man. So anytime that we're coming into the survival mode, this is the vibrational frequency that we're oscillating at. So in other words, the child will have that vibrational frequency. These fetuses that are being created are also manifested in that same vibrational frequency, and they match the kind of agendas that are creating them. A higher vibrational connection is a higher wavelength. It moves faster. And so the entire organism, this also plays a role in our understanding of ascension. When we are becoming awake, we are raising our vibrational frequency. We are heightening how we are oscillating in order to create lighter light bodies that are moving through physical matter, physical mass, or our perception of this holographic matrix that we're experiencing. All this information is passed down primarily through the mitochondrial DNA. And the mitochondrial DNA is basically the maternal DNA. It is a picture, a snapshot, an absolute snapshot of the before. So this is where we have collective information that is being passed down within the body. And again, all of that information is designing the kind of experience that you're going to have coming into this earth. Now, the gestation process is incubation for up to a week, 3 months, or full term when hybrids are being born. So this is where we begin to understand our hybridization program on Earth, what makes up the holographic DNA, what makes you and I. Some of these hybrids that are created are inserted into the timeline, and it's when you and I, we become parents and we bring a child into the earth. This child is encoded with that information, this non-physical information and the terrestrial information, and we are formulating all of these children as they come in. I'm going to just quickly move through this. Well, I can share with you because I want to primarily talk about these hybrid children and how they affect our timeline. In my experience, I've had 24 hybrid children, some of which were part of a draconian reptilian lineage. Some of them were reptilian, some of them were Pleiadian, and I was participating in Earth cloning programs as well. Now, the Earth cloning programs take your genetic material. They can take genetic material from any part of the body, but they prefer the spinal cord. The spinal cord is the primal information where all of our information is moving through the different endocrine systems, and it's where all your data is stored within the spinal cord. The oldest storage system of your information is there. So that is utilized in order to create more of clone systems. The clone systems that are being created are more artificial intelligence. These are organisms that are just kind of any time that we are not conscious and aware of our consciousness, we become mechanical, we become artificial. So this is what we're dealing with here on this earth. All of the different systems of our earth that begin to put us into a hypnosis collectively, disconnecting from our understanding of what we are, of our psychic abilities, of this multidimensional navigation. We become disconnected from those things and we become mechanical, ultimately artificial intelligence. So what we want to try to remember is that through the activation of these, the awareness of just the hybridization program and also our multidimensionality, we can activate these things. We can heal. So this is a little more on interdimensional and human hybridization, but the plan, the purpose of these programs are the same. It is the modification of genetic code, genetic modification, GMO. We are GMO human race, GMO hybrids, and so on and so forth. So all of these children are brought in depending on the vibrational frequency of the timeline that each human is experiencing. There are many different types of hybrids. Indigo children are one of them. Crystal children are another. Again, you can see these slides on my website with more time, and I'm sure many of you are quite aware of the specific details of these lineages of children. But each one of these children are bringing more activated gene codes into the collective gene pool. Basically, and this is how ascension works. Anytime this child is born into the ascension timeline, it begins to pull forward our human race. But at the same time, we can access this activation without having children. We can activate the DNA within our body, and we can activate the awareness. And it not only affects us, but it affects our entire lineage. Okay. So hybrids are very important because they embody higher strands of DNA, and they are not always put into the hybridization program, into the reincarnation cycle, but they are kept on board craft, and they are utilized in other, programs and other Earths. There are many planet Earths, or not planet Earths, but there are many planets that are also having the same genetically modified programs as we are here. What we want to remember is that how the body becomes active in all of this understanding is by transmuting, changing this counter-creative spiral movement through the body from a destructive counter-creative movement into an expansive movement. And we do so by becoming aware, being fearless of truth on all dimensional planes. Fear is the thing that limits us from the ability to see these things as they are without fear and activate our psychic abilities. So the difference between artificial intelligence and consciousness is that limitation of the mind. And what we want to do is activate our understanding that we are infinite consciousness, and we literally are, through the body, a wormhole that connects up to source and channels that life force in the body, and it is organized, that infinite consciousness, within the chakra system. The chakra system starts in the root, going all the way up to the seventh in the physical plane. And the first three chakras, when they're out of balance, it's completely informing what we're experiencing. So all of the ancestral cyclical trauma is being constantly triggered and expressed when we do not manage that, when we don't learn how to deprogram from those limiting belief systems. And it very much affects the body. It creates blockages in your organism, and you begin to become aligned with the counter creative cycles of the earth, which we call the matrix. The matrix is a limited artificial intelligent system that is meant to hypnotize the human into believing this physical plane is based in the physical sensory sensation body. And while we continue staying in that emotional body, we will not be able to access the higher realms of the physical body. And we continue to come back into the reincarnation cycle without our awareness that we are not applying the free will. The free will is only available to those that want to be conscious of themselves. So, as we begin to activate these aspects of ourselves, we can activate our consciousness and healing. Um, I'm not sure how much time I have. How am I doing on time? Are we okay on time? Just a quick time check. Okay, let me check really quickly. I'm so sorry. I can't hear anything. What was that? It's 4 minutes? Four, 40 minutes? Perfect. No, fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, thank you for that. So let's talk. Let's go a little bit deeper into how can we transcend this matrix limitation, this illusion that we are in? How do we activate the DNA? How do we utilize our understanding of holographic DNA in order to activate the superpowers that this human body actually has? Now, we are a cell. Literally, this is what the universe looks like. It is a sphere within a sphere within a sphere. And within each one of these spheres is infinite possibility. We are literally, we are literally that sphere within the body. We have infinite potential of creation within the body. And so, how we begin to access that is by understanding first the fractal principle of our creation, because everything is fractals and it's moving self-similar models of creation. We begin to see little patterns in the information that we have, in our traumas, in our life events. If you notice, some of us might be experiencing always meeting the same kind of limitations in our relationships, in our work, in our personal relationships, and our spiritual work. We find these little cyclical patterns that we run into. All of that is encoded in your genetic code and can be deprogrammed by accessing the root cause of this information. And we begin to understand how to access the root cause of that information by understanding how these organisms are storing the data in the body. The As you can see, as above so below goes into a really literal representation. We are The nervous system in the body has the same structure as a nebula, and how the universe is created. But this kind of self-similar pattern is important for us to understand for ascension, because it's how we heal the body. We are literally these toroidal fields that have a center point that is creating. We are accessing multiple timelines simultaneously at any given time right now. Every single one of your emotions that you choose right now is dictating a timeline that is being created in an alternate universe. And that's important because every thought, even though it can be, most humans are afraid of the future. They're afraid of what happened yesterday. And so we begin to think the worst. Sometimes we imagine our death or our illnesses, and we begin to create. Please remember that when you are tapping into those memories, you're literally creating in an alternate universe. And the thing about these universes is that at some point we can always meet those universes if we physically match the vibration of this thought form that is being created. So we can begin to change that by always staying in a state of neutrality in the physical body. Okay, the physical body has the ability of being neutral, being in the present moment. And it's in that neutrality that we begin to employ free will. anything outside of that neutrality is influenced by the emotional system. And the emotional system, unfortunately, is informed by these patterns, these ancestral traumas that are being passed down. So it's not really the ultimate truth. It's just one perspective of many potential perspectives the human has. So we can transmute these emotions. And we talk about the ancient mystery schools always talked about alchemy, right? The alchemy of man. How can you begin to change from that heavy metal into this gold, into this fluid gold, right? And so the idea is that we move from the fear emotions into the love emotions. And love is actually more than just an emotion. It is actually the center point, the 0 point of creation of the universe. It is within that 0 point that the human finds health, bliss. There was this book called the I believe it's something about bliss, that I think it was Bruce Lipton that wrote this book. But he talked about the magic of bliss and how bliss was the most conducive vibration for the body to come into in order for it to be healthy, in order for it to manifest, in order for it to create. So these laws are not just based on just that emotion. It is really a biological system that is coming online. And what it does is it begins to activate our genetic code. We are literally activating the code. Let me just come back over here to. We are literally activating the genetic code within the body, which allows us to change and shift the experiences that we are having. Um, so when we are in the lower vibrational frequencies, we are a match to all the fragmented events, all the fragmented experiences that we have had in past lifetimes and in alternate aspects of ourselves. So we can begin to tap into those and bring them into the present moment. This is where we begin to bring illnesses, ancestral lineages, many emotions that have gone down, very traumatic experiences, like, for example, the Holocaust, okay, or these mass events that have happened collectively on Earth. We begin to experience them and bring that into this timeline. So, what we want to understand is that all of this can be deprogrammed from the body by becoming aware of the programs that are there first. And usually, it's always going to be the same kind of information. Okay, what is it? So, there are two emotions in the universe, one is love, one is fear. And fear is basically separation. Anytime that we see things as separate, as the other, yourself and the other, when you tap into the love energy, it is the unity, seeing yourself and the all. And so this is basically us becoming aware that the entire organism that we are is an expression of cause and effect simply, and that there is nothing outside of us. There is nothing outside of us that is affecting us. Even when we have some of these traumatic experiences, entities, these ETs that are affecting us, even the government that might be interfering in some things, all of these external things are part of this hologram that is being directed by what we embody in the physical body. And this is very important to understand, because our understanding of epigenetics helps us understand that the environment influences our genetic code, but we can also do the reverse. We can influence our environment based on what we are within the body. And this is actually where the human enters into its God creator state. This is where the human begins to empower itself into its superhumans. All of these layers that you see around you are around every single one of you. And each one of these layers is informed with information that designs your every moment. If you are in this moment in a state of worry or anxiety or helplessness, you are pulling from everything in that field around you that is a match to that experience. So, in healing, especially right now when we're having these things occurring in the world around us, um, and something that I saw in 2017 in my hypnotherapy, all of these hypnotherapies are public, so you can see them. They're on my website. But one of the things that I saw was that we were going to be entering this fog in the universe. So it's like the universe was moving through this red fog of energy and information. And it was going to manipulate fear. It was going to weaponize the fear that is within the human against the human, in order to create this destructive cycle for man. And we are evidently really going through that. And in level 20, we're experiencing this massive shakeup in the world around us, where we're experiencing this event. And it's really causing us to question all of the safety nets that we've ever had. It's really beginning to tear up the way that we perceive the world around us, the way that we perceive ourselves and our relationship with ourselves. So this is important because this is an opportunity for man to begin to understand that how it creates in the universe. We are being educated because in the next 4 or 5 years, we are going more into the virtual. We're going more into that holographic aspect of ourselves. The holographic aspect of ourselves is either being activated or destructed. And it becomes destructed. We literally create holes in the auric field with stress and with anxiety. And through these holes in the auric field, life force is completely depleted from the body. It is depleted, and it's a match to any entities, any beings, any external manipulations that we might be experiencing are occurring through the multidimensional body. Just as I was explaining here, all of these holes that are created in the multidimensional body, they block the life force moving through the body. And this is what destroys the immune system. It begins to create inflammation and illness in the body. And basically, we become a cancer to ourselves, and the body is self-destructive. More importantly, we are counter-creative. We are counter-creative. And as you see this model here of how in the quantum field, this reference point, let's say this point up here is a thought form. This reference point is directly affecting the physical organism. Because it's a holographic system, we have access to all reference points at all time. And any time that we match that reference point, it begins to influence this moment. So healing really can take place in the body by beginning to shift all of these main root blockages in the body. The holographic DNA that we are made of, the system that is holographic, is literally our environment. Our DNA is being expressed in our environment. We are a match to the people that we're with. All of you that are in the room there today are a match vibrationally to one another. And we have all experienced and are currently experiencing simultaneously other lifetimes together. So when we begin to understand this, the gap between that separation, seeing things as separate, really is now, it's kind of like that string theory, right? We're now here. We're all here experiencing in one all of these potential possibilities. The only time man can become aware and active is in the present moment. There is nothing outside of that present moment, because the present moment becomes this incredible charge within the multiverse that is aware of itself. How we create agreements, contractual agreements to experience parasitic consciousness, or to even experience the hybridization program, the lower agendas, is by being so unaware, being in such hypnosis that we are not aware of the agreements that we're making. And this is what ends up happening, that we participate in the creation of this matrix, and the holographic DNA that surfaces the planet Earth, with all of its very traumatic experiences. We participate to that when we are in hypnosis, when we are not aware in the present, because we are making subconscious agreements to things that are counter-creative. We are feeding into organizations and systems that are destructive, that are not looking at the benefit of the whole, right? They are self-serving. These, it can be the pharmaceutical industry, it can be the financial banking systems, it can be the oil, whatever industry on this earth, because they again, they are managed by a small percentage. They are informing us through mind control, manipulating our senses in order to feed into these systems, to invest in these systems emotionally, energetically, and of course, with all of our means of survival that we are, told to create. And so, this codependency in these systems, combined with the hypnosis, really makes the human in a moment of a perceived disadvantage until it wakes up. And when it becomes aware, it becomes informed of many things. And one of the most difficult things for the human to kind of embody is that awareness that it is absolutely powerful. It has the power to completely embody consciousness and pull away immediately in this moment. You can bring yourself into the present moment, heal your body, cut cords with the things that you are connected to. Many of you have cords to past memories, past lives, people, things that people said to you a minute ago, and how much life force is being depleted from your organism. All of that is writing your genetic code. It's either writing illnesses and destruction, or it's writing vitality, healing, and the true co-creation with free will, because every word is a creation. Every word that you speak, every feeling that you have is a creation. So we're really coming down here to the meat and potatoes, I call it, of creation. The fabric of our reality is created by ourselves at the very fundamental level. The emotions, the belief systems that we have is creating reality. And all of this information that we have, the traumas of our childhood, traumas that we're holding on to from family, all of this are things that we can deprogram, because all of these experiences are seen through limited perception. Once we begin to broaden our perspective in those experiences, we can now take back the life force, the fragmentation that was occurred from those experiences, and bring this organism into what we call healing, becoming whole. And ultimately, the human has the ability to become whole. Let me show you this image here, just to give you a visual. What does it mean for the organism to become whole? When we are at the moment of death, we are either having a successful death or a death that is counter-creative. And what it means is that your vibrational frequency at the time of death will define your next life. It'll define the next point in this structure that you see right here that you will navigate to, because your consciousness will leave this physical shell of a body, hologram, and it will move on to its other existing available experiences. But because we are a vortex, because ourselves, we are moving through this energy, and when energy isn't moving through this body fluidly, it's stagnant with traumas, pains, sufferings, illnesses. The body cannot detach from the physical body in a high vibrational moving. It's a slow wavelength. And a lot of times, this is how ghosts come to be. They get trapped in between these dimensional planes, between the ninth, eighth, the physical plane, and they can't move on. They can't see that light, right? The light source, the infinite light, that infinity, we are not a match to that. We just can't see it. All we can see is this physical plane. So in order to have a successful death, we have to raise the vibrational frequency. That means the body has to be light. It has to be in a state of love, bliss, acceptance. And when it's in that state, it begins to move really, really fast. And it can detach from the body easily, moving into that light because it's a match to that light. And it can choose more constructively. What does it mean to heal the body? It means that we reintegrate our fragments. In my, I meditate up to 10 hours a day, 8, 9 hours a day, in order to begin to deprogram all of the limiting beliefs that I experienced in this lifetime and in these other lifetimes. After you clean this lifetime, your other lifetimes become available to you. They are expressed from the DNA. You activated that aspect of yourself. When you clean that part, the ET aspects of yourself, and you keep going. until you embody the light body, which is what all of these great sages, Buddhas, all these incredible light beings, Jesus, all of these beings, they have gone through that process. They are embodying the light body, which is not polluted and limited by these limiting beliefs that are creating this information. And it really, really plays a role in the compassionate humanity that we have with one another. Because when we begin to deprogram these programs, I'm not just affecting myself, I'm affecting the collective. Because remember, just 2,000 years ago, you and I have a relative in common, which means that we've shared lives, all of us here on Earth. Any new soul that's coming into this earth, at some point has met this group of souls. Again, we are this network here. And at any given time, we are interconnecting with one another. So the integration, the healing that is available to man is so powerful. And once we begin to reintegrate into this present human, now the activity, now the fun begins. Now you can create, now you can manifest. Because anything lower than that deprogramming, you are manifesting from only the reference points that are available to you. All of these points, all of that point that you saw in that cubic square, that's your reference point. And so you keep going back to that. That's what limitations and blockages are. They are belief systems that are stuck in your body that haven't progressed from that lower into the higher. So our reality ends up being Groundhog Day. This is why that film is so incredibly important. Not only is it talking about everyday experiences and patterns in your life, but literally lifetimes, because we are repeating lifetimes over and over again. We are seeing the same people. We're having the same blockages. We are dealing with the same limiting beliefs, anxieties, fears, lack of self-love, feelings of disempowerment. We are all moving through the same energies, and all of that is a part of this matrix, the matrix, because it's meant to make us experience duality, meant to make us experience the physical plane. So the more we can transcend from those limiting beliefs, the more we have the ability of leaving the matrix and experiencing something else, and that's true free will. If we continue to stay in the lower realms, we're going to continue reincarnating here. And when we reincarnate here, we're continuing these patterns. That's what it means to be asleep. We are hypnotized and we come into this hypnosis. The moment we're born into Earth, all the emotions begin to program until the age of 7. And now your entire reality is based on these fears and limiting beliefs. So we want to move beyond that. I guess what I'd like to end in, and I'm just going to move through here. Excuse me. I'm going to just briefly, talk about, a couple tools that we can do just to bring ourselves into this incredible self. And I created this acronym called GPAC. Grounding, protecting, aligning, co-creating. And what GPAC is about is basically becoming aware that you are this multidimensional self. Okay, always being aware of the emotions that you're feeling. And at the end of the day, doing a quick practice, and maybe you guys can do this weekend, at the end of your day, going through your day and just becoming aware of the emotions that you had, simply acknowledging them. Simply that acknowledgement will begin to help you understand yourself and wake up from the hypnosis, from this sleep that we are in. And soon this will become a momentary practice where you are in your present moment, becoming aware of yourself. All of that is influencing. Remember that you're constantly writing code. Remember that. Remember that when you're eating. Remember that when you're feeling. Remember that when you're speaking. That you are a product of your environment until you come online, until you wake up. And that's where now our intuition comes online, and we can begin to see things in more dimensional planes. We see ghosts, we feel things as empaths. Some of you are empathic, so you have a lot of things open. But how do you manage that? And how do you create boundaries between what you're experiencing? Because that's something that a lot of empaths experience, is that they're completely lost in how to navigate themselves and the other. And the only way you can do that is the same thing. You become aware of who you are, what you are, why you are what you are. And that creates an understanding of what doesn't belong to you. We literally can create a bubble, visualize a bubble around the body, and making sure that that sphere, it has no holes in it, because those holes are your life force draining through the unconscious parts of yourself. So as you become aware of yourself, owning that, anchoring that into the moment, into the body, and the chakra system, instead of having your root chakra wide open and being in a state of fear, you begin to bring that in, bring that in. And the chakras, the lower chakras should only be open 2 to 3 inches wide. They should be closed during meditation, and they should be open 2 to 3 inches wide. The heart should be larger, the throat should be larger, the third eye should be larger. And you literally look in the glass when you're meditating. But when you're walking around, you are a column, you are a column, you are a rainbow column, and hopefully activating up to the 13th dimension. We want our awareness to be higher and integrate that, ground it into the physical body. If you can merge those two, you will not get sick. You will not be blocked. You will not have these limiting issues happening. You will be flowing. So this is very conducive to the health of the body. And when we ground to the center of the earth, we anchor ourselves in the earth. We are aligning with the magnetic field of the earth. And it's moving at a different rate. It's moving at a different thing. But we are aware of the natural movement of life force. So nature is incredibly important, which is why this retreat is so incredible. We are in nature, which allows us to align with the natural movement of life force through the body. And nature is the quickest way to bring yourself back into the body. Remember the self throughout the day. And I guess to do deeper work in your meditation, work with your emotions. Okay. Notice why you have the same repetitive patterns in your life. What is the emotion that you felt last week? The one that kept coming up? What is the emotion that you felt last year? You're going to notice a pattern. And in that pattern is a key to enter into the root cause, which is usually in childhood. And once you can heal that part of you, you are awakening a fragment of your whole and bringing it into your present moment. Little by little, as you reintegrate yourself, changing the vibrational frequency of the whole body. So I'm going to end there, and I guess we can open it up for questions. But just to let you know that I am part of a couple documentaries and shows on the hybridization program, including Extraordinary the Seeding. You can check that out. It's specifically about the hybridization program. And if you wish to work with me in DNA reprogramming, you connect with my website. I am a hypnotherapist, member of the AHA, member of Opus, and holistic stress management and meditation, a Qigong master, and an intuitive. So if you wish to work with me in any of those modalities, please do connect with me at my website at geraldineorozco.com. And if you are an experiencer, please join us in our monthly groups where we go really deep into these topics on hybridization and contact. And pretty soon I have a very exciting announcement about an app for contact that I will be sharing with all of you. So here are my websites, and I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Hi, yes, I can. Oh yeah, a great question. Yes, it is an aggregate copy of everything that's gone down the mother lineage. So, of course, we all have a mother. And so our mother passes down that information. The reason why it comes down the mitochondrial lineage is because it's an aggregate copy of the before. So everything that has happened in that lineage previously is recorded, and so on and so forth. We're going down generations and from till the beginning of time, till the conception of life on this planet. We have all of that record within the body. And so all of that is expressed then. And so what you notice is that it's patterns. After you start looking into that information, you realize it's just repeating patterns. And the question is, why is it repeating patterns? And it's because we are in a structure of reality that's designed those patterns. So it really, your father and your mother, both of them are holding on to mitochondrial DNA. So, for example, in my family, father and mother both have had contact experiences in my entire family, and I hear this all the time with my contactees. It comes down that it's just the mitochondrial DNA that really has nothing to do with a mother and father. Everyone has that mitochondrial DNA within it, and it's the record keeper that is the aggregate copy of everything that we are. I hope that answered the question. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Hi. So good to see you, Buckaroo. Yeah, I'm so sad I missed you. How are you? Thank you. Childhood trauma. Yes? Okay, absolutely. Yeah, so what I do at DNA reprogramming, I offer 2 main services. One is DNA reprogramming, and in DNA reprogramming, we are accessing through the emotions, we are accessing the root cause of these repetitive programs. And when we open those up, we begin to work with your ancestral lineage, even star lineages that are influencing that information, because remember, it's all similar vibrational frequency, basically, what we're looking at. And so we begin to reintegrate once we heal those fragments, which basically, how do you heal? Is you broaden the perspective of the fragment. You broaden the perspective. You take it from this maybe, linear kind of thought. What's that word? There's a word that's like myopic view of what you're experiencing, and you're broadening it so that it can understand that it's the whole, not just that experience. And that's how you begin to release and open up the channels of energy that flow through that organism. And you reintegrate that into your body, and it literally not only heals the part of the body that's holding on to that information, but it begins to allow activation of the rest of your genetic code. So this is one thing. We also work with hypnotherapy, and in hypnotherapy, we take you deep into the deeper states of the subconscious mind, where you can begin to access your other fragments. So I showed you that big orb of the different fragments. You can begin to travel past lives, simultaneous lives, and you begin to understand much more profound way. It's not only is it a vibrational change to your body, but it's literally editing how you are experiencing the now and all of these simultaneous aspects of yourself. And you can even bring healing into the present moment through that. So that's kind of a couple ways. And of course, I have a YouTube channel with many meditations that you can also check out, that I do address some of this childhood trauma there for free. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Thank you. Hi. Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Incredible question. Thank you so much for that question. And you know why this is so important? I love that you asked this because it really shows your level of awareness and understanding that, you know, we can heal others with ourselves. And so, how do we do that? So, first of all, for the autistic child, telepathic communication is very much the language that is occurring here. It's vibrational language, and vibrations are felt through a lot of autistic children through emotions. They are incredibly sensitive to the emotions and energies around them. So making sure that you're aware of what that feels like. Of course, you're gonna tune into your intuition and your sensitivity as well. And as you heighten your sensitivity, you become more attuned to that language. You're going to begin to notice variations in emotions in the room. The child will probably respond. They will either become hyperactive or they will close down, depending on what their pattern of behavior is. But if you begin to notice that, you can begin to work with your energy in the space. As I mentioned, the chakra system is a holographic system of our environment. So imagine if we are in a state of anxiety, the solar plexus, we are operating and creating the environment through the solar plexus. Everything is anxious. It's, feelings of disempowerment when we're in the lower realm. When we're in the higher realm, we are holding a very safe space in the body and in our environment, and the child will definitely respond to that. Now, in meditation, there is a way that you can create. We have karmic contracts, these agreements, experiential agreements that we have made with that soul. And so you can work with those agreements. You can work by creating a symbol or a vibrational frequency that will shift the kind of responding telepathic connection that is occurring with the child. And so, for example, I have a mother that she imagines a strawberry, and anytime she remembers to put that strawberry up in her mind, in her energetic field, it's an abstract object, but it's encoded with vibrational information. And so the child is able to be more calm. It's as if the child feels safe and seen, because a lot of these children, they battle with, dealing and juggling not just their own emotions but others' emotions, because they're very highly active in that realm. So it helps calm them and let them know that you're there with them. It's a vibrational imprint you're putting out. Now, the same thing with contractual agreements can be done with other children as well. We can break the karmic contracts, the limiting contracts, the painful, suffering agreements that we've made to experience. And as you break those contracts, you begin to shift your vibrational frequency, and it changes what they're experiencing. When you heal yourself, you change the way you manage yourself in stressful environments and stressful experiences, and you become kind of a powerhouse, a lighthouse in this home, in this environment, and they begin to learn that from you. The key is to teach love through the embodiment of love, because what happens in the world is that we grow up without understanding what love is. And, some of us, we haven't even felt what true love is throughout our entire life. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to become pioneers in that. And when we embody that love, which means seeing yourself as the all, this is felt, it radiates from your center core out, and it begins to shift not just them, but they are looking for that guiding light. Children are looking, even though they might seem resistant or rebellious, what they are want is love. And so to beginning to instruct them on how to embody unconditional love and acceptance for themselves first will be one of the most powerful things that you can do to help create a strong foundation for their future. And then, of course, it starts with our work. So yeah, there are several things. If you connect with me after, I can send you a couple videos that I have on some techniques that you can use. But thank you for that question. Amazing. Thank you. Amazing. Yes. Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not very informed on her technique around ancestral reintegration, but honestly, with a good practitioner that is familiar with karmic contracts primarily and how that works, you should be fine. You know, the thing is that you heal and you reintegrate the body. What I do is holographic hypnotherapy, which means that not only can I see everything that you see, but I align with the body and we heal the body energetically, removing anything that doesn't belong and, you know, training you to do what I do basically. So working with any hypnosis practitioner, I'm sure QHST is very good at doing that. But the idea is to focus on dissolving old programs and replacing those programs with more constructive, creative, belief systems. That's the key. As long as you can do that in any kind of healing session, you should be able to progress, and evolve through that. Yes. Absolutely. So, simply visualizing a bubble, a sphere around your body, and then noticing where it's difficult to imagine that sphere around the body, that is where you're open. That is where your life force is being siphoned out. That's where you have attachments, entities, all kinds of things. So, what you'll do when you get to that opening and that area that feels difficult, you're going to tune into it intuitively and notice if you feel cords or heavy energy in those spaces. Go ahead and visualize pulling them out of your body. What they're going to look like is like octopus or threads or little arms or little, like roots of a tree that are these fibers that are interconnected with many parts of the body. They're connected to the chakras, the organs. So as you heighten your intuition, you begin to acknowledge, in depth and clean that out. And you're going to start getting memories. You're going to start getting images, downloads on what those chords are about. The clarity will be able to come over time with practice. But doing this at all times, including right now, like, are you grounded? Are you aware of your back, of your body? And then making sure that you're constantly always aware of your space, especially when you're in groups of large people, because this is some people are, they're vampires. They're very familiar with how to do energy, and they can siphon your energy just by touching your hand or your body. So it's just aware to just make sure that you're always employing your free will by owning your space always. Yeah. Thank you. Much love to you. Thank you so much. Hi. Yes. Absolutely. So, just looking at the multidimensional body right now, I can tell you that there are implants in the body that are still there, and they're very much etheric as much as they are physical. And they are located here in the spine and around the head, but also around the ankles and the arms. So, I want you to notice it actually creates this entire network around the body that creates this overlay of reality. Okay, so what's happening is that it's attaching into the brain and the nervous system, and it's targeting that. It's what is it called? It's attacking. It's attacking the nervous system, and this is very typical with lower vibration attachments in the body. Okay, so one of the things that you can do first of all is you need to look at your agreements. The reason why we have a lot of heavy connection with the reptilians is because that's in our own bloodline. We have that very present recently in the bloodline. So we have to work with the reptilian aspects of ourselves that are coming up, okay? And that's basically the primal energies of us, the survival aspect of ourselves. How can we change that from being in survival into a state of creator? And it can be done by practicing the basics, being in the present moment first in your physical body. But in meditation, I would like for you to take a moment to look at the contractual agreements. I want you to tune into these artificial intelligence, see these beings, shine your crown light. And it's very important because our seventh and eighth chakra are actually the ones that help us break contractual agreements, etheric contracts. So we need to activate the crown, shine it on top of these beings, and see the contracts that you have. Dissolve those contracts once you understand. And as you dissolve them, it might take you a couple weeks over and over daily. But as you do that, you're going to change your frequency. Also, and when you change your crown chakra color, you're changing the frequency immediately. So in meditation, I have a video on my YouTube that you can follow because I teach how to run energy through the body. But you intuitively, by closing the first three chakras, don't do that all the time, just only when you're in meditation. You close the first three chakras, you are heightening your intuitive abilities. And so this allows you to see the color of your highest vibrational frequency. When you identify that, you're going to put that up in the seventh and eighth. It's going to make you not a match to these reptilians and any lower entities. This is one of the most powerful techniques that have really just completely changed my life when I was dealing with military abductions from the government and also these draconian influences, because they were coming to visit like almost every night, and it was just overwhelming and traumatizing, you know? And so when I became aware of these contractual agreements, it began to change. And from one day to the next, it ended. It ended. So you can do that. If you connect with me, I'll send you how to activate the crown and you can kind of begin that work. Okay. Yes, yes. I work virtually internationally and I'm from California. So wherever you are, please connect and I'm happy to do a session with you. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for working with all of this. And it was a pleasure and an honor to be here. Much love. Take care.